Our reporter on the Zondo Commission, of course, Tumalo Mckinsey. Tumalo, good afternoon to you. So, Anoj Singh, before he's appointed to Eskom, is having meetings with people who took 1.6 billion rand from Eskom.
Yes, absolutely. And he seems to think that there was nothing untoward about this because he says that he would not necessarily have known he would be seconded. And these meetings were just about discussing how to solve Eskom's problems. There was a consultancy services. But then soon afterwards, then he is then seconded to become Chief Financial Officer at Eskom, which is very murky because this is what the Commission of Inquiry is trying to establish as had he known beforehand that he was going to be seconded to Eskom and with the view of making sure that he would smooth over certain contracts that Eskom had entered into that were seen as being questionable. And he says no, he would not see those contracts as questionable because those contracts were for work that was done. However, when the Commission's evidence leader pointed out that those contracts were entered into before the work was actually done and they were just transferred to another entity, he says there was nothing untoward about that because there was a service level agreement in place which would have allowed the previous company, Trillian, to then transfer its work to Regiments Capital. We heard from Mosilo Mothepu how she found that to be very questionable because it seemed as if these contracts were transferred over but somehow had to be backdated and signed off as if they had been agreed to before Trillian had even existed.
Okay, so Anoj Singh is meeting with someone to discuss Eskom before he works at Eskom.
Yes.
I mean, what were they discussing? The weather, betting, gambling, perhaps. Which is the best safety deposit box in Joburg? It's a bizarre situation.
It is a bizarre situation, and it raises all manner of questions, Stephen, because then the question is, what would have been, the scope of discussions, and would he have been told that he was then going to be seconded to the utility, and could they have been discussing how he would then smooth things over? He seems to think there was nothing untoward about that because it was part of his consulting services, so to speak, and he couldn't have predicted that he would have been seconded to Eskom. But how is this possible? Because these links then continued and contracts were then approved.
But he was the Chief Financial Officer at Transnet, wasn't he? And then Brian Molefe had just moved from Transnet to Eskom. Unless they lost each other's numbers.
He seems to think there was no link there, and but at the same time, it does raise the question of when Brian Molefe was seconded from Transnet to Eskom, what was happening? Because he was moved after there was a controversy that had happened. Anoj Singh was also part of that in terms of securing the 1056 locomotives deal, which was billions that were paid for a deal that should not have happened in the first place. Molefe had said before the Zondo Commission of Inquiry that perhaps that his team and those around him should have known better. Anoj Singh gets moved over with him, and we still see the Gupta-linked companies and entities getting contracts for dubious agreements for work that has not been done and for contracts that would have been shelved before. So again, the question is, how is this link between Molefe and Singh moving between the entities and at every turn being linked to Gupta-linked entities? And of course, the name of Salim Essa being the central, if we can call him, negotiator. He seems to be the guy to be striking these deals, Stephen. And again, Anoj Singh says there was nothing untoward about that because he wouldn't have known some of these deals would have been entered into before he agreed or he entered onto the scene.
Tumalo, help my aging memory here, but this rings a bell. The idea of someone meeting with an advisory service before they actually got a job. Didn't this happen at SARS? Didn't Tom Moyane meet with Bain to discuss restructuring at SARS like a year before he was appointed commissioner?
Yes, absolutely, a year before he was appointed commissioner, and that raised a lot of controversy just about the restructuring process at SARS. And when he arrived there, of course, that created a whole lot of tensions, and he was seen to be allowing Bain, so to speak, to essentially be pulling the strings from behind the scenes. And so this again brings to question the issue of the scope of power and responsibility that officials that are tasked with overseeing, managing state-owned entities, how they should safeguard the integrity, so to speak, and not to be seen to be compromised. Because when an outsider is seen to be calling the shots, then the questions become, then how does the outsider then get to then consult or get work with the entity that he is also supposedly directing?
Well, I mean, it just tells you there's a parallel hierarchy, doesn't there? It tells you that there's something else. I mean, that would be the indication. Anoj Singh's not done. The State Capture Commission's coming back today.
Yes, Anoj Singh is not done. He's going to continue with his evidence, and then we will also get to hear later on the evidence of another person who's talked before the Commission of Inquiry, just to try and plug the holes in Anoj Singh's testimony, because he would have been also linked with Trillian and others as an executive, and he would then be able to unpack whether Anoj Singh is telling the truth and perhaps even contradict some of the evidence, because this is very key to what happened when Anoj Singh approved those contracts that ended up apparently lining the pockets of one Salim Essa.
I mean, all in all, what you start to see is this is some of the climactic moments, if you like. It's the last scene of every episode of Law and Order, where you have, someone being cross-examined. But we also understand that other people, they're going to be there's Anoj Singh being cross-examined, but other people are going to be cross-examined soon on various deals. Yes,
other people are going to be cross-examined on various deals, just to try and find out if the line of events, the sequence of events that happened actually correlate with what either Singh is denying and what others, including Bianca Goodson and Mosilo Mothepu, who were central to Trillian at the time. They were brought on as the CEOs. Mothepu had resigned, and then Bianca Goodson was brought in, and she also kind of raised the questions as to what was happening, and seeing that these deals were actually being backdated. She testified how she was forced to write proposals for deals that had already been agreed to. So this is what needs to happen, because then Singh's version is that no, there was nothing untoward, and he was acting in the best interest of the utility. However, when you look at how the deals were brought about and the wheeling and dealing behind the scenes, it paints quite a different picture. And so this is what the Commission is trying to do, to get a full picture as to what actually happened. Was there anything untoward, or is it, as everyone else who's on the hot seat seems to claim, that it was all above board and there was nothing wrong?
Mosilo Mothepu, thanks very much indeed. Well,